Today's episode of the DCAU review is brought to you by Anchor by Spotify, the easiest way to make a podcast. When Liam and I first started the DCAU review, we discovered a few different things. First of all, you had to have somewhere between Lex Luthor and Bruce Wayne level financial resources in order to be able to pay for a website to host your podcast. You also then had to have Richie Foley level intellect in order to figure out how to both edit and then get your podcast distributed onto Apple or Spotify. The great thing about Anchor by Spotify is that all of these things are available in one place. Everything you need to make a podcast is available all in one spot. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And when hosting on Anchor, it makes it very easy to then distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many more. And the best thing about Anchor is it is totally free. So what are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app today or head over to anchor.fm and get started in creating your own podcast with Anchor by Spotify.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 220 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, with me, my good friend, good brother, the man that runs our Twitter account. That's right, it's Liam. Liam, we are in the 5th Saturday of the month, which means we are, of course, taking a trip around the multiverse. We've been spending a lot of time in the multiverse as of late, but we figured, hey, who are we to stop a tradition that we determined was a tradition on our own? That's right, we have to adhere to the rules that we are making up on the spot here. So we are taking a trip around the multiverse, but we are exploring a new universe that we have yet to explore here on the DCAU Review.
That's right, and just in time, actually, the new season just dropped this week, the first couple episodes at least. So what better time than to dive into the pilot of the much celebrated Harley Quinn animated series?
That is right, Liam. We will be reviewing just one episode this week. That is the pilot, as you mentioned, which is goes by the title "Till Death Do Us Part." We will check that out, and of course, we are going to get the official IMDb synopsis from you here in just a second. Before we jump into our 4 categories, but before we do, let's remind our listeners that this episode originally debuted way back in November of 2019, specifically November 29th, 2019 was when the first season of Harley Quinn dropped on the then named wonderful DC Universe app. Still a big fan of that application. It's a wonderful application. You can't get any video on it anymore, but it's a great app. I dare say maybe my favorite app in all of the world. Yes. So before we do that, of course, the IMDb synopsis for this week's episode brought to you by the Pod Tower. Head over to youtube.com/the Pod Tower. Get all of our previous 219 plus bonus episode reviews and much more, plus great content from other DCAU content creators. That's youtube.com/the Pod Tower. Please go and subscribe and like our videos.
That's right. So this is the synopsis for Till Death Do Us Part, which was written by Dean Lorey, Patrick Shoemaker, and Justin Halpern, directed by Juan Mazaleon, with music by Jefferson Friedman and animation by NE4U Inc. And that synopsis reads as such. Harley sets off to rule Gotham City and separate herself from being known as Joker's girlfriend. I would say that's a good synopsis for the series. I don't know that this first episode really, I mean, at the very tail end, as we'll get to in plot, we see her sort of striking out on her own. But this really is more about the breaking free of the Harley Quinn you may be familiar with if you've, say, only seen her in Batman the Animated Series or some of the other animated appearances she's had prior to this.
That is fair. I dare give you a higher grade than for your synopsis versus this synopsis. So perhaps we would grade this as didn't quite read the entire or watch the entire episode, only watched the last 2 minutes and gave your synopsis based on that. See me after class. Yeah, but I guess we can jump into our plot here, Liam. We open up here, and I guess we need to be fully transparent here and clear. If you're not familiar with this animated series, this is not at all a children's cartoon, and we are dropped right in the middle of a scene that will tell you that this is not a children's cartoon. Not only are there 4-letter words dropped right and left all over this cartoon, but there's a lot of extreme violence that we'll talk about and in visuals and animation just a second here. But there's a ship about on the Gotham Harbor, and Harley is making a speech in front of all of these well-to-do millionaires who are celebrating PG version screwing over the poor as they cheer to, which I thought was hilarious. And Harley drops in and begins to deliver her diatribe and try to drop some lines. And she's one-upped by none other than the Joker himself, who can't let Harley get too much time in the sun here. She and he begin sort of having this verbal spat back and forth as the millionaires attempt to defend not only their giant pile of cash that's just sitting open on the deck of their giant yacht, but they begin bringing out all sorts of over the top weapons, and both the millionaires and Harley and Joker. And
just did it again.
That's because I forgot I had the acid bomb.
But we agreed I'm the muscle. I do the hitting.
You know, you're great. You're great. You do your thing, I do my thing. You're the appetizer. I'm the entree.
I can't spend my whole life just bashing goons. When Gothamites hear the name Harley Quinn, I want them to piss themselves. I want a taste of that.
You want a taste of piss?
No, you know what I've meant. God, listen, Puddin' King just see me in the Legion of Doom.
That is just... You don't want that. No, the Legion of Doom doesn't give memberships to sidekicks. You have to be...
Partners. I want to be your partner in crime, for reals.
Can we talk about this later?
If not now, when?
I don't know. Tomorrow? I've kind of got my hands full right now.
Violence ensues, lots of people getting killed, lots of blood, lots of unsavory deaths occurring as these barbs go back and forth. And just as Joker and Harley sort of come to this realization that Joker can't let Harley be the main focus of anything, and she is objecting, wouldn't you know, the Dark Knight does make an appearance and show up, foiling Harley and the Joker, but the Joker manages to make an escape in his submarine. As he does, Batman has Harley in handcuffs, and Joker says that he can't afford to fit Harley into his submarine, but he swears that Harley shan't spend much more than a single night in Arkham, and that he'll be there to break her out. And from there, we get a flash to the top of the GCPD, where Jim Gordon, who is written just completely, he's off the rails. He's just a complete spaz in this show. He's paranoid. He's talking to himself. He's got OCD. He's on edge. He's on edge. We'll say that.
You're Cancer Quinn, spreading from Gotham's lymph nodes into its spleen, and God help us if you get to Gotham's bladder. But I'm the chemo.
How long is he gonna keep doing this?
You're a festering boil, Quinn. A bed sore. A tapeworm that sets up shop in Gotham's lower... Jim. All right. Where's the Joker?
I'll never give up my puddin'.
Why are you protecting a psychotic clown who treats you like garbage?
Ask the guy who bats.
He doesn't do that! Jim. Sorry.
And so he and Harley and Batman are all on the roof, and they're trying to get information out of Harley, and she doesn't want to give Joker up and says that she, as far as she's concerned, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and some other inappropriate things, she knows that the Joker will not let her spend another night in Arkham. And then we get a time jump to 6 months later, and wouldn't you know, Harley's still in Arkham.
Yeah, this is maybe from a comedic standpoint my favorite sequence of the episode. As yeah, we have a couple of time jumps as you said, starts 6 months into her stay at Arkham, then we get to 9 months, and then it's a year. And the whole time, of course, she has her best friend and future love interest Poison Ivy there to just keep reminding her that the Joker doesn't care about her, and if he did, why would he be waiting so long to break her out? We get introduced to a few other of the familiar Gotham rogues like Killer Croc, the Riddler, Calendar Man, who is a really funny little. It's like three bits where Ivy just offhandedly asks him for how long it's been, and he just pops up and says how long it's been and then disappears. But it cracked me up.
I like the initial bit too. He's there. They're all in the the teleconference room where they all have visitors and they're behind glass. And apparently Calendar Man's wife and son are there. And Calendar Man knows to the day how many days Harley has been in Arkham upon request from Poison Ivy. But then his wife gets quite mad when she realizes that he can remember that but can't remember his own son's birthday. And there's some hilarity that ensues because of that. But yeah, that was a good line and a good little bit that continued throughout the show.
Oh, Mr. J? Oh, sorry, my bad. You looked a little like him.
I don't know why you bother coming here. He's never showing up.
Yeah, off. But for the record, he does have a point.
Just give me 15 more minutes. Joker's probably still fighting Batman.
I don't know, hun. It's, most superhero fights, they're not like... Calendar Man, how long has she been in here?
Oh, hey, Ivy, 183 days.
Oh, sure. You remember the incarceration date of porn clown over here, but not your own son's birthday.
For the last time, I'm sorry, Debbie. Come on, I know it's June-ish.
It's okay, Daddy. I brought you this cactus to keep you covered.
I ain't no plant life within 50 yards of Poison Ivy, you moron! No wonder your dad doesn't remember your birthday.
Yeah, I think that's some of the most fun we have here. But yes, as we approach the 1 year and Harley continues to insist that the Joker loves her and is just waiting for the right time to break her out. Finally, Poison Ivy is able to break out not only herself but the Riddler, and kind of causes a full-scale riot. And despite Harley's protests, where she insists she wants to stay in Arkham even while all of the guards are gone, and she can kind of walk right out. Finally, Ivy sort of takes things into her own hands and knocks her out and takes her with her as they wake up in Ivy's hideout, where we meet a talking plant named Frank, who is very upset about the house guests as Ivy sort of is once again pleading with Harley to let it go, and even kind of holds up a photograph of the former Dr. Quinzel. And Harley this happens a couple times throughout the episode, but has sort of an inner dialogue with herself, literally, where the doctor, the analytical part of her brain, lays out very clearly what this relationship she has with the Joker is and what the problems are. But Harley can't quite bring herself to quit the Joker. And after having this conversation, Ivy and her sort of finally get to the point where they've decided that Harley's going to go tell the Joker off. And as they arrive at the Joker's hideout, and Harley does initially seem to actually be willing to break things off with the Joker. But as they leave, Joker, pulling a classic move out of the guy who can never admit he's wrong's playbook, then has to pretend this was all his plan. And he kind of does the Spider-Man thing where he's like, it was too dangerous for us to be together because of all of my many enemies, and Gordon and Batman will never let us be together. Unless, of course, our love is so powerful that doesn't matter.
Ragweed.
That's it? Just, hey, Harley, you left me in Arkham for a year. You abandoned me. You lied to me. But this is the last time. I am here to break up with you.
Oh, she's dumping you.
No, she's not. She doesn't call the shots.
Yeah, because I'm calling a cab. See you never.
Oh, thank goodness. She's finally doing exactly what I prayed she would.
For f***'s fuck's sake.
Much as it destroys me to say it, Harley, I was going to insist on breaking up because it's the only way to keep you safe.
What the hell are you talking about?
Yes, no, please continue with your bullshit.
The world's gone mad since you've been in Arkham. Have you seen Commissioner Gordon? He's lost it. He wants revenge because I paralyzed his partner. He and Batman are hell-bent on destroying everyone I care about.
That's why you didn't come get me?
Keeping you away from me was the only way to protect you, and still is. So I'm afraid, my dear, this is it's a heartbreaking goodbye.
Oh, no, wait.
No, wait. This is what you wanted, Harley.
Is it?
It is, yes. You came here to do this.
Yes, listen to your awful friends.
So, this is really the end?
Yep, this is it. Let's go.
Unless what?
Unless our love is so powerful, even the threat of death can't keep us apart. Oh, screw it. I'll die for you any day. I'm in.
Really? Me too.
What the fuck just happened?
We're gonna need some privacy. Sorry, it's gonna get real gross real quick.
At which point, of course, Harley runs right back into his arms, and Ivy is sort of left frustrated once again. And that's sort of where we get to our third act. Another subplot of this is that we find out that the Riddler is also was freed the night that Ivy and Harley escaped, and that he's promising to have a riddle that is so funny that it'll make people's heads explode. And the Joker is just furious that people think the Riddler is funny.
Yeah, there's quite some crude things that the Joker says about him, but he basically says that he's most famous for being the most indirect a-hole in all of Gotham. So I thought that was quite hilarious. But it's even done so on the local news. The news is calling the Riddler the most funniest criminal in Gotham. So it's just almost too perfect that this is happening. So both Harley and Batman arrive at the Riddler's hideout, which is this Sphinx-shaped green lit question mark covered hideout, and they both arrive. Riddler has a riddle for both of them that they solve very quickly. They don't even let him get the entire riddle out of his mouth before both of them have solved it. And they realize that the answer to the riddle is that it is acid. In a trap that sort of mirrors the Batman Forever trap that had both Chase Meridian and Robin in it, in these dueling sort of containers that he was threatening to drop. He captures Batman and Harley Quinn in these spheres and is threatening to drop them into acid, only for the Joker to arrive, which I kind of dug this, because normally you would have Batman having to make the decision, who's going to be dropped into the acid. And in this episode, it's the roles, of course, are reversed. And this time it's Batman stuck with Harley also stuck, and the Joker has to choose between the two of them. And Harley thinks it's a no-brainer that the Joker, of course, is going to pick her. And we learn very quickly that the Joker has a deeper love and bond for Batman. Instead, he chooses to release Batman, and that, of course, leaves the Riddler to drop Harley into what we believe is acid.
Riddle me this, you two. What is cold but still burns? What will eat you if you drink it? What?
Acid.
It's acid.
I am not done. What is... Wait, did I say the thing about cold but still burns?
Yes.
Right.
No.
Because it's acid.
No. Okay, it's acid. I'm dropping you in a pool of acid.
You're making a big mistake, because when my man hears about this, he's gonna come running.
Precisely what I'm counting on. Why don't I invite him over right now for a little game night?
So you don't have a riddle so funny it makes people's brains explode?
No.
I knew it! You won't get away with this, Riddler.
If there's no riddle, why are we here?
To play a little game. Choose one to live and one to die. And in the acid, the loser will fry.
Is it the good kind of acid that gives you superpowers?
No.
Oh.
Choose!
Go ahead, tell him, Mr. J. Deep fry that bat.
Yes, well, yes. It would seem an easy choice, Harley, but
Puddin', even for you, that's a lot of maniacal giggling.
Sorry, my little strung-up pheasant, but I couldn't possibly let this punctuation prick take credit for killing Batman, now could I? Free the bat! Drop the broad!
As she drops into the acid, she sort of has this flashback to some memories, maybe her life flashing before her eyes, and we see her dancing with the Joker on a rooftop in a very romantic scene, and him proposing to her, only for Dr. Harleen Quinzel to interrupt and ask her to remember it correctly, in which she realizes that the romantic violinists were instead Joker goons with guns, and that they weren't dancing, but that Harley was in handcuffs on the roof, and that the Joker was not holding a ring, he was holding a grenade. Harley, even though she realizes that she's now remembering correctly, she doesn't quite remember why the Joker would wrap all of this scene up by saying, "Till death do us part." And then she realizes, thanks to herself, thanks to Dr. Harleen, that Joker was not saying "till death do us part" to Harley, but to Batman instead. And he did so before he threw the grenade, and kind of left the grenade in Harley's possession, and Batman had to save Harley from the grenade exploding right then and there. So she comes to the realization that the Joker does indeed love Batman more than her, and it's at this moment that she's pulled out of what we believe to be acid by Poison Ivy. She's quick to thank her, but Poison Ivy admits in that moment that A, it wasn't acid, it was margarita mix, which was hilarious, and B, that she was responsible for the whole Riddler setup, and that she did so in order to convince Harley that the Joker was indeed up to no good, and didn't care about her, and that she deserved better and deserved to kick Joker to the curb. So it's at this point that Harley decides that for real this time she is going to let Joker know that it's all over.
That's right. So then we get the transformation, which we'll certainly talk about because she's been in her sort of original classic jester outfit for the whole episode. But we get the transformation into, and I'll just say, we've talked about this a little bit before about how, comic book creators definitely don't get the compensation or recognition they deserve.
Definitely not.
But she turns into an Amanda Conner drawing.
Yeah, 100%.
And actually, Amanda Conner is credited as a character designer on this show. I saw, so she at least is credited in the show. But as far as just a complete revamp of the character, her along with her husband Jimmy Palmiotti, who wrote like 3 giant omnibuses worth of the new 52 Harley book. That sort of all of this it's not directly based on that, but the sort of the story of Harley striking out on her own and getting her own side, her own like wacky side characters and
the humor and all of that. That's very, very, very similar, and the meta nature of everything. Yeah.
Yes, that pretty much all comes from that run. And those people should be millionaires because they made DC and Warner Brothers a whole lot of money. But anyway, yes, she transforms very much into that look. We'll perhaps get more into that into visuals, but and then returns to the Joker hideout one last time, where she defiantly tells him that she's not just going to become a villain in her own right, but in fact she's going to replace the Joker as the #1 villain in Gotham. And he, of course, sicks all of his goons on her. And even though her mallet is destroyed, she finds her new favorite weapon, which, of course, is the trademark of baseball bat that, again, you would see her hold in a lot of toys and statues and things these days.
And movies.
Yes, and movies. Very good point. And she eventually is able to take out all of the Joker's goons, and has the Joker dead to rights, but tells him that she wants to let him live so that he can watch as she takes over Gotham and everything that was his. So that's sort of our mission statement for the show, as Ivy and Harley are walking off into the sunset, sort of with Harley having her new mission statement that she's going to go out and prove herself to be just as bad as any of the other top tier villains of Gotham City.
There you go. And then we roll credits, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I will say, so we can kind of get into discussing our plot scores here, Liam. As we stated at the top, not a children's cartoon, very different spirit in this than you would expect to see in a DCAU property. Very different than even some of the more mature adult movies that we've covered when it comes to the DCAMU. This has the dark humor and the just unfiltered language, and it's an adult cartoon. It's just meant to be for adults. So it's a little bit harder, I felt like, to put this up against some of the other stuff that we've watched because of the tone. It's like if you dropped, a rated R Family Guy episode into the DCAU, or if you made with the violence, the way the violence is, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but if you took the Deadpool movie and made it into a cartoon movie for DC, like it's
very very Rick and Morty, I think, in the tone of the jokes and the over the top violence, for sure. Like that's definitely that type of audience is definitely who this is aimed at, as opposed to a fun for the whole family sort of thing that we might review on a normal week.
Absolutely. And I will say the dialogue is lightning quick. The jokes are written very, very well. In this day and age where you've had cartoons like Family Guy and The Simpsons and all these quick-witted, quick dialogue cartoons on for so long, it feels difficult to break new ground at times. So I don't know that this breaks new ground, but I will say that it at least does what it was set out to do, which is kind of be on that level of tone for a cartoon for an adult. So I don't know. I had seen this before going into it, and I think I watched at some point most of, if not all of the first season. On and off. I think I watched it while doing other stuff, had it on in the background. So I hadn't remembered a lot of the stuff that happened, but the joke still caught me by surprise. Some of the one-liners and little things, the misogynistic nature of the Joker when he comes out. The line that made me cackle is when he says women aren't funny, and Harley standing right there. I thought that was hilarious. It pokes fun at the very misogynistic nature of that type of character and makes him out to look like a fool, as it should. So I did appreciate some of that stuff. I didn't quite get the Frank the Plant character completely. I guess it's just another character for Ivy to bounce off of when they do stuff later on in the series in her apartment and all that. So it's something there. And all of these shows kind of have to have an ensemble cast of like 50 people, it seems like it, whether it's this or Bob's Burgers or any of those other ones where you just have 500 characters in it. It's like the Simpsons formula. You got to have 500 characters that come in and pop in so that people can go, oh yeah, it's that guy. So all those reasons, I settled on a score of 7 out of 10. I think it's good for what it is. I don't know that I would have sat down and watched this with the interest of like with the determination to watch it and do a review of it if we didn't have a podcast, obviously. But I think it's fine for what it is. I just think that I'm in a different place in my life for this type of cartoon and cartoon humor, I guess.
Yeah, I ended up settling on the same score. That's the thing. It's like the things I enjoyed the most about this, and again, I think I had seen this once before, is the wacky side characters. Like we already talked about, Calendar Man. The Gordon in this show, I think, is so funny.
Yes,
because he starts out, he's doing like a Frank Miller monologue about like Harley Quinn's a cancer festering in the city, but I'm the cure or whatever. Right. And then he just kind of pulls back, and you just see this like horribly disheveled, insecure man.
Yeah.
And like there's a scene where he and Batman are talking about the Riddler, but right before Batman goes to confront the Riddler with Harley, and and he tries to invite Batman to a barbecue, but Batman swings away before he can finish his sentence. Like just little bits like that I think are really, really funny, and it's like that's the stuff I really found myself. The overall narrative, like I said, you're really doing a lot of building blocks, because I guess you wanted to do sort of a narrative reason. You didn't want to just start the show with her already breaking out on her own. So you have most of this first episode, I feel like, isn't quite as reflective of what I think works so well about the series, which is all the, the wacky characters and other villains that she surrounds herself with. Whereas this one is much more narratively focused on just getting her, broken free from the version of Harley that maybe people are familiar with. So yeah, all things considered, I still think it's good. I think it's pretty funny. Like you said, the jokes are fast and they come very quickly, and it's very raunchy and funny and violent, certainly, as we'll talk about visuals more in a second. But yeah, overall, I think a good solid 7 for both of us. I think we both definitely had a good time with this.
For sure. All right, Liam, let's move on to our visuals and animation for this week. And I know you mentioned the animation studio at the beginning. Was definitely not one that I was familiar with. But yeah, it's it's definitely a different, more modern style of animation than we're used to. As far as the characters are concerned, you already mentioned that the initial Harley Quinn that we get is very much the character model from Batman the Animated Series, or that originated in Batman the Animated Series, continued in the comics up until the revamp of the character in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, I guess, right around that New 52 era.
Yeah, so it would have been like 2011-ish, I guess, and even then this version is kind of, I think, maybe a little bit further into that run. I think her initial look was a bit different when they first launched that. But yeah, certainly when Miss Connor and Mr. Palmiotti took over the book is kind of when that more modern look with the red crop top and the I think the blonde, like cotton candy colored hair, I think it is from the Suicide Squad live action movie. I think that was added in. I think she originally had red and black hair as well, but yeah, this is very much yes, kind of inspired by that. I guess would have probably been like 2012 2013 era of her comics when those two creators took over.
There you go. Well, all that to say, I kind of dig the way that everybody looks. As you mentioned, Jim Gordon, the disheveled looking sort of just beaten down cop who's losing it, looks pretty, matches the voice that we get for it, that we'll talk about in just a little bit here. And the Joker sort of has that modern haircut with like where they do the thing where they flip it back and you get the fade on the side, the like preppy white guy haircut that everybody had from like 2012 to 2017.
Yeah, it's kind of the Greg Capullo Joker, if you from the end game. I think that was called End Game. Yep. His last Joker story with Scott Snyder.
There you go. We have the Riddler, who just has who looks like sort of like the Edward Nygma that we left in Batman the Animated Series, or the New Batman Adventures rather. But he's got a big question mark tattoo on his head. And then we get Killer Croc, who looks like a crocodile, an anthropomorphic crocodile. Calendar Man is just kind of a chubby guy with numbers on his head. But we don't, and Poison Ivy, of course, who looks like a more modernized Poison Ivy with the green skin. She's got sort of a track jacket or something that she wears on top of her normal jumpsuit, what have you. But yeah, I thought the character models looked pretty solid. I feel like a lot of the animation is done because the the cuts are done so quickly that there's not as much character movement, or there's not much done. A lot of it is dialogue. So it's just mouths moving and characters maybe shifting to the right or to the left. And that might be for budgetary reasons. That might be for who knows, just the way that modern cartoons are done. But there's less moving of characters, more close up on character faces, I feel like, than you would in a typical superhero action cartoon or a modern superhero action cartoon. But that's because I feel like the show is done for the main part of the show is dialogue. It's not necessarily action heavy. However, as stated at the top, there's a lot of violence in this, including blood, bones popping out of people's orifices, skin being ripped off of people, people exploding. There's a lot there. What did you have for your notes?
Yeah, I think I had similar notes about the character design. Shane Glines was actually the lead character designer on this series, who did a lot of work on Batman Beyond and the new Batman Adventures as well. So I think that is, while this show definitely has its own unique visual style to it, I think you do settle into it very quickly as feeling, it feels familiar. And I think it matches the kind of the pacing of the episode. Everybody has these very, big expressive eyes and faces and things like that I think work well for that. The as you mentioned, there's not a ton of action, but the opening bit on the ship where Joker and Harley are just running through these sort of, rich gangster types on the boat, and then the end where Harley's fighting off all of the Joker's goons. Yeah, it's just, you see bones popping through skin and blood and missing teeth and gore, and there's a bit kind of in the middle where Harley's fighting a bunch of guards at Arkham while she's still locked in a straitjacket, and she Mike Tyson's one of them. She bites the ear off and is like headbutting one of them really violently, and tries to kick one of them in the groin, and then looks up and realizes it's a woman, and then like jumps on her shoulders and starts headbutting her. It's just, the violence is all like very hyper quick and violent and wild, and that's definitely, again, something that we talked about for years how rare blood was in especially those early Batman the Animated Series episodes, but really throughout all of our main shows here. So it is an adjustment, and you have to just keep reminding yourself that it's a different kind of show, and I think it fits the pace of I think it fits the vibe that this show is going for, which is, again, like we talked about, that very the Family Guy, the Rick and Morty style, like definitely centered, directed at teenagers and young adults who just see that hyper violence and all of that. And I think that does work really well for it. And yeah, the character designs I think are all pretty fun. I ended up settling on a pretty strong 9 out of 10 for my visual score, just because I think those opening and closing fight scenes, they're so over the top. The bit where you think the Joker's going to take a mask off, but it turns out he's actually wearing this person's skin as a suit. And then he proceeds to, once he tears it off, puppet it while you see, the flesh of the guy's scalp, dripping blood off of it. It's just so over the top and silly.
She's not exactly alone. She brought a +1. It's me, Joker. Apologies, but your friend Rupert just couldn't face coming out here. I'm so sad. Where's my body?
Puddin', what the f*** are you doing? You're not supposed to take his face off yet. I had this covered.
Yes, but I thought up that great +1 line, and then I'm not going to not puppeteer his face. All right, fine.
I think it's just, like I said, it's so violent that it's almost uncomfortable. There's a bit where he throws like an acid bomb, and you just see guys, it's like the Raiders of the Lost Ark thing, like their flesh all melts off, and then you see the skeletons and things like that. It's so over the top that it almost becomes like it almost starts to wash over you at a point. But again, I think that's part of the point, is that it is so over the top and violent, because this is set at a different audience than what we're used to. So yeah, like I said, for what it set out to do, I think they did a pretty darn great job throughout the whole episode, but especially those action beats.
Yeah, I went just a couple points lower. I went a 7 out of 10. This type of over the top violence, I feel like it was just a little, like, I understand there wasn't as much action. I feel like maybe I would have complained if there wasn't as much action. Like, that was too dialogue heavy. But this, because of the amount of violence in it, it was just a little bit too much having those 3 scenes. You have, as you mentioned, the ship scene, then the midpoint where she's breaking out of Arkham or fighting the guards in Arkham, and then you have the last scene with the Joker's goons. Are the Joker's goons zombies, by the way? Because they kind of look like zombies and act like zombies at times, but it's definitely not clearly stated that they are zombies.
Yeah, I'm not 100% because there's the one guy that he I forget the name is almost like a zombie pun too, I want to say, and he shoots him in the chest like 3 times, and the guy just kind of keeps talking. So I wasn't sure if that was.
They all have like scars on their face and like a lazy eye or like something wrong with their eyes. So I'm not sure. That wasn't abundantly clear, but that last scene, if they are zombies, then maybe I would have. If it was more clear that they were zombies, maybe I would have given it less of a point higher or so. But the 3 really brutal scenes, like, it's just a little bit too over the top for me. It's just not my jam. It was done well, but it's just not my jam. So maybe I should have taken a point off from the plot and made the score here a point higher, because it is done well. That's for sure. We didn't talk about the Batman model at all, but he is sort of, I feel like a hybrid between the modern day Batman, the New 52 style Batman, sort of married to the Dark Knight Returns Batman. He's a little bit wider, a little bit bit bulkier than we've seen in prior animated appearances, but he's and his voice matches him, as we'll talk about in just a few seconds here, a familiar voice behind the scenes. But yeah, I think the visuals are fine. I think it's just, it would be getting used to that over the top violence, and if that's something that continues throughout the series, then maybe as you mentioned, it would be something that you can kind of normalize and get used to and be okay with. But it is shocking at points, especially the scene, as you mentioned, where she bites the guard's ear off, was just a little too brutal for brutal's sake for me. So that's probably why I gave it a little bit less of a score than you did. So, all right, Liam. Well, that will move us on to our next category, which is going to be music. And this week's composition and soundtrack come from a Mr. Jefferson Friedman, who composed the tunes for this week's episode. Got to be honest, other than some background music in those fight scenes and a couple of the more poignant moments, including where Harley is sort of lecturing herself and she's having the dream sequence. By the way, didn't mention it, but the dream sequence where she's dancing with the Joker did remind me an awful lot of that famous Joker painting that Alex Ross did, where there's an Alex Ross painting, one of my favorite and your favorite artists of all time, of Joker and Harley dancing. And I thought that was a nice homage to that as well. But as far as the music is concerned, the music accompanying that, I love that the music sort of shifts as Harleen shows up and tries to correct her memory, and it starts to shift and become more sinister and a little bit darker as she realizes that she's not remembering things quite as they were. I will say that when Batman arrives in that scene, also the Batman theme, it's not one of the themes that we're used to, but it felt inherently Batman to me. It's very orchestral and very dark, brooding, but triumphantly sort of crescendoing as Batman makes the appearance, and she has this realization that Joker loves Batman more than her. So I thought that was good. And then I think the culmination of the episode, as she's battling Joker's goons in his warehouse and sort of the warehouse is being destroyed around her, I thought that was a pretty solid piece of music as well. What about you?
Yeah, I think those were the standouts for me. I did make a note of the Batman theme that would kind of play whenever he showed up, very evocative of a Shirley Walker theme, even though it's not quite the one we're used to there. Yeah, I think the Harley theme itself that we hear, it's kind of played just briefly when you get the title card of the show and then over the credits, but they also bring it in when she's fighting the Joker's goon at the end. You have this really, really fast-paced sort of drum-based. I don't think you can call it ska because there's no horns in it, but it's that kind of like just really fast-paced, really snare drum focused music, which I appreciate as a drummer myself and in my real life. But I appreciate that it's just really fast paced, and even though it's not maybe a theme you would hum, I think it fits what they're going for with this. There's clearly sort of that feeling of the, we're changing all the rules, and now the college kids are running the campus type of vibe going on when Harley kind of finally breaks free and goes after the Joker herself. So I think that fits really well with the show's motif. And so yeah, I think the Harley theme and the Batman theme were kind of the two bits I had in there. So yeah, overall, I settled on a 6 out of 10 for music. Like I said, I didn't have many other notes beyond that. I did make a note of the theme playing during her kind of her fantasy where she's convinced herself that the Joker was proposing to her. I think that's kind of a nice sequence. But this is another show I think that because it's so dialogue driven. A lot of those scenes, like the scenes in Arkham, the scenes in Harley in Ivy's apartment, there just isn't any music. So, like I said, I think the character themes are kind of when it shines the best.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I gave it the exact same score, 6 out of 10. It's not a show that, based on the review of just this episode, it doesn't seem like a show that needs to, or that is going to focus a lot on music other than maybe punctuating a joke or punctuating a particular poignant moment. And that's okay. It doesn't lend to there being a lot of impactful pieces because of that. It doesn't mean that the pieces are bad. As we've stated, there are things that we noticed and things that we thought that were good. It was just, It wasn't needed or asked to be much more than mood setting music for, at least for this episode. So, and based on what we know about the show, likely not for the duration of it, but it'd be interesting if we revisit this show in the future, what our perception is of episodes going forward. But 6 out of 10 is still better than 50%. So it's a higher grade than that. It's a 60% grade.
It's a passing grade.
Passing grade. That's right.
These get degrees, as they say.
There we go.
But anyway, yes, that's kind of my thought on it. It just doesn't seem like it's a very, at least for this first episode, not a big musically focused episode, because it's so much of a joke machine and everything's kind of focused on the dialogue.
Yeah, I concur. All right, Liam, let's move on to our last category, which is going to be a fairly large one to cover because we have an entirely new cast from a show that we've never covered before, but there may or may not be a few voices that we are familiar with from either past performances in DCAU work or DC animation work, or just maybe knowing them from being famous actors or actresses. Let's talk about this week's voice cast.
That is right, Cal. So I'll just get the known ones out of the way very briefly. Phil Lamar does make a small appearance in here, one of the background actors. So I wanted to, of course, shout him out as one of the goats of the DCAU voice acting. But elsewhere in our cast, playing the Riddler, we have Jim Rash, who he's a very funny writer and director. He's won an Oscar, I believe, I forget if it was for a screenplay or for writing or what it was, but I know him, and you know him best as the dean on Community, which is my favorite show. I don't know. It changes kind of. If you ask me that question 5 times, I might give you 5 different answers. But Community is very, very near and dear to my heart, and his role as the dean on that show is definitely, I think, one of the more memorable characters on it. So even though it's a small role here as the Riddler, I just love that he's here.
Yeah, he's a great actor. As you mentioned, his role in Community, he steals every scene that he's in on that show. And I don't know, he's pretty funny. I love his dialogue back and forth with Poison Ivy, where he tells her that she should have gotten the Costco card. They have some cards back and forth between that. I thought that was hilarious. There's a PG-13 reason or way that he supplied the plant for Ivy in order to get her to allow the Arkham breakout to occur. So we learned that he's partially responsible for that. So yeah, there's he doesn't have a lot to do, but I feel like that a little bit of dialogue that he gets to do with our Batman and our Harley Quinn, where they cut him off and don't even let him finish the riddle. I thought that was pretty solid too. So that whole scene with the death trap setup is really where he gets to flex most of his voice acting chops and doesn't miss. Yeah, he's pretty good.
Absolutely. Elsewhere in the cast, we have JB Smoove playing Frank the Plant, who of course folks would know from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and he's one of the teachers in the more recent Spider-Man movies. Don't get a lot of him in this episode, but it feels more like, wouldn't it be funny if we had this very famous comedian voice a talking plant? Yeah, like that seems to be most of the conceit of Frank as a character.
Yeah, I did laugh. There's one in the only scene, or the main scene that he's in. There's a bit of dialogue between him and Poison Ivy, and Poison Ivy mentions that she had paid a young man to come over and water the plants, but he clearly hadn't been doing his job. And Frank decides, that guy quit 1 week after showing up, and then he vomits up a skeleton, and that is clearly supposed to be the boy that was watering the plants. And Poison Ivy asks him, well, what happens if his parents come looking for him? And he says, yeah, that won't happen. And then he proceeds to vomit up a pair of other skeletons, of course, that are the kid's parents. So that's the part that's most memorable for me for that character, at least in this episode. I know there's a lot of other dialogue that he gets in further episodes, because there's a lot of stuff that takes place in Harley and Ivy's shared apartment. So more for him for the rest of the series, and not much to do for this week.
Absolutely. And elsewhere, we have Christopher Maloney as Gordon. I think we've already kind of covered his highlights, but yes, just playing this completely out of his mind, disheveled, insecure, weird version of Commissioner Gordon, who just looks like he's, just a second away from a heart attack, or
completely the opposite version of the character that he plays on Law and Order, who's kind of just this calm badass that is, that has it all together, and is leaning on criminals, and he's cool, collected, and nothing shakes him. And yeah, he's completely the opposite in this case. He's falling apart. He's trying to get Batman. He thinks Batman's awesome, and he wants Batman to be his friend, but Batman wants nothing to do with him. He's cracking up. He definitely needs to see a therapist. It's definitely a unique performance, and is a unique spin on the Jim Gordon character that we haven't seen. And I feel like he does a pretty good job doing so.
Absolutely. And speaking of Batman, another familiar voice we have here, Cal. Not a ton of dialogue for him in this episode, but it's always nice to hear the great Diedrich Bader playing the role of the Dark Knight, as he shows up at the beginning, and then, of course, as we said, is involved in the death trap that the Riddler has seemingly set up to try to make the Joker choose between Harley and Batman. And he is not really there to be humorous. He's kind of the straight man who's has to endure some verbal slander, I would say, from Harley involving what he does with bats. And then as well as just having to react to Christopher Maloney's Jim Gordon. But always good to have Mr. Bader on the show.
Absolutely. And everybody else around him is playing either a wild caricature of the version of their character, or is just straight comedic character, or what have you. And that's pretty much what happens around him, him being Diedrich Bader's Batman in the Batman Brave and the Bold. Obviously, this is a little bit darker, a little bit less dialogue, and less focus on him in this show, but he plays that character well there, the completely serious, no nonsense Batman. And they just said, hey, can you dial that up again and give us a solid dark Batman performance, a straight laced, no nonsense Batman? And wouldn't you know, I'd say he knocked that one out of the park pretty well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He does a great job as always. And our last few voice actors here to talk about, we have Alan Tudyk playing the role of the Joker. Alan Tudyk's one of those guys. He's in a million things and often doing a more comedic role, perhaps. But you might know him. He was actually the voice of he's the voice of the main droid in Rogue One. He was on Firefly. He was
Steve the Pirate in Dodgeball.
That's right. That is a great pull right there.
Steve the Pirate.
Absolutely. And has done a lot of other voice acting work as well. Yeah, he's a pretty good Joker here. He other than our main leads, who we'll talk about in a moment, probably has the most to do in this episode. And he actually, although that character doesn't appear in this episode, he also pulls dual roles later on, as he also voices Clayface in this series as well. So very, very talented actor, very talented comedic actor especially. And I think you already kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but the very on the nose sort of misogynistic keeping Harley in his back pocket at the start of the episode, where he's talking about how women aren't funny and stepping all over her punchlines and everything, and insisting that he be the one to actually commit all of the murders that she is trying to commit, and him just trying to overshadow her. The scene where she tries to break up with him the first time and he turns it around to actually, this is what I wanted, I think is really, really clever and really funny.
The gaslighting scene is spot on. I will say his Joker voice is a slightly, I think, more serious version of the King Candy voice that he did in Wreck-It Ralph, which is maybe one of my favorite cartoon voices of all time. Anytime I hear the King Candy voice, I just it just makes me giddy inside. So this Joker is in the same vein as the King Candy voice, so that makes me love it even more. It's its own unique thing. He definitely comes off as being this maniacal, self-involved, gaslighting, terrible human being. So the voice, the fact that the voice matches the actions of what the cartoon character is doing on screen, I think works really well. The scene where he's trying to figure out the Wi-Fi password when Harley walks in, I cackled at that when it.
Hey, does anyone know our damn Wi-Fi password? Harley? Oh, is that you?
It's me, kid. By the way, that's also the Wi-Fi password.
What is? It's me, kid, or just me, kid? Yeah, it doesn't matter. You look fantastic. Is that new lipstick?
You treated me bad.
What?
You lied to me. You never loved me.
Come on.
I know that now.
Well, that's nonsense, Puddin'. My motives are never clear. I'm an agent of chaos. That's what you love about me.
Not anymore. We're through.
Oh, yeah, this again? Let me make this clear. You don't ever break up with me. I'm the top supervillain in Gotham.
Not for long, because you're looking at your replacement.
You? Replace me? I created you. You won't even get out of this building alive unless I let you.
There were several moments where I cackled to myself just watching this by myself here, but and most of them were the Joker's lines, whether it was him with Harley or just one-liners that he delivered. But yeah, really solid stuff from him. Really enjoyed Mr. Tudyk's performance as the Joker, his own unique spin, and we've talked about it with the myriad of different Joker performances that we've heard. It's very, very hard to put your own unique spin on it since the legendary performance of Mark Hamill. So to set yourself apart, not just do a Mark Hamill impersonation and come across as a funny, effective version of the Joker is no easy task. And I think Mr. Tudyk did a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely. Last line I'll mention of his is when he's in the disguise, which again turns out to be a skin suit, and he addresses the other rich Gotham gangsters as my fellow whites. I howled. I thought that was so funny. He refers to them as my fellow whites. That really made me laugh. But Yeah, he's fantastic as he often is in these comedic voice acting roles. But sort of as our last two, we have Lake Bell as Poison Ivy, who I probably know best from the Adult Swim Children's Hospital series.
Okay.
I thought she was very funny on that. She was also on Boston Legal once upon a time. Has been in a few other lots of other movies. Has also done some other voice acting work on things like BoJack Horseman, and most recently she is the stand-in sound-alike for Scarlett Johansson on the Marvel What If show.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So yeah, she has some other voice acting chops to her name as well. But as far as setting up, she feels like they've set up that like Poison Ivy is Daria in the show. Like she's maybe not quite that devoid of emotion or that sarcastic, but she's just this, completely kind of walled off. Everything she says is kind of said with this sort of sarcastic drawl to it, even though it's clear that she does really care for Harley and does want her to break free from the Joker, but she can't just like make a big emotional plea. She has to kind of like ease Harley into it through these schemes. And then, as you already mentioned, her scene with JB Smoove's Frank when he reveals that he ate the people that were supposed to be keeping an eye on her plants, and then the bit with her and Jim Rash's Riddler arguing about Costco, I think are both fantastic too. And then she gets a lot to do with Harley as kind of being the angel on her shoulder. As much as anyone in this show is an angel, she gets to kind of play the voice of reason for Harley in this.
Yeah, she has some good chemistry with Harley, as we'll talk about her in just a second. But I think, and that's the most important thing here, because obviously they're headed towards this complicated love triangle between the three of them, the Joker, Harley, and Poison Ivy here. So we need to make sure that this this Ivy rather has some sort of a chemistry with Harley and is able to kind of separate and differentiate herself from the Harley Quinn character. They're basically just sort of doing the same character makeup that we saw in Batman the Animated Series, where Harley is the goofball and Ivy is the straight woman in this case, or the straight plant. I don't know. Is she a plant? Is she a woman? We're not sure. She's not the comedic. She's very dry. She's got a dry sense of humor. Everything she delivers is very dry, or every line is delivered very dryly. So you're setting up the same dynamic that we're kind of used to, but you still have to have a bit of chemistry, pun intended, between the two of them. And I feel like Lake Bell does enough and shows enough emotion, despite having it dialed back in comparison to our Harley Quinn and our Joker here, to still come across as an effective character. So I liked her performance. I thought it was pretty solid.
Yeah, totally agree. And that there, Cal, will bring us to our main event here in the voice acting section, playing Harley Quinn, and perhaps controversially, I don't know at the time if this was controversial or not, but not doing the Brooklyn accent.
Only from time to time. She says Mr. J a couple dozen times.
Yes.
But that's the only time she does it.
Yes. But of course we have Kaley Cuoco from most famously from The Big Bang Theory, and lots of other television and movies.
8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter.
That's right. Absolutely.
R.I.P. John Ritter.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I'm laughing. The man is dead, but
because you weren't expecting a John Ritter reference on this episode. I have no doubt in my mind that you were not expecting anybody to say, you or me, to say R.I.P.
Yeah, that one was not on the bingo card, I have to say. But yes, playing. Oh, John Ritter. May he rest in peace. Well, back on the Ritter cast here. I have we do have Kaley Cuoco playing Harley here. Like I said, I think it takes me a second because I'm so used to whether that's Arlene Sorkin or Hynden Walsh or Tara Strong or really everyone else who's played Harley. Even the live action Margot Robbie version has adopted that sort of accent. So just hearing her do her normal voice did kind of throw me off a little bit, but I think you settle into it pretty quick. And I think her bouncing off of Alan Tudyk's Joker and Lake Bell's Poison Ivy, and even, you know, Diedrich Bader's Batman, I think you settle into it pretty quickly. At least I did.
Yeah, no, I concur with that. Maybe unsurprisingly, I think there are people that and after 220 plus episodes of this show, you get an ear for who gets voice acting and who should be a voice actor and who should not, or a voice actress or a voice actress, or who should not. And I think that very quickly you realize, even if she's not doing the stereotypical Harley Quinn voice that you're used to, Kaley Cuoco is made for voice acting. She knows how to be quick with the dialogue and deliver it in a way that sounds like the character itself is speaking, and she's not reading a script. There's emotion and layering to it, that she has to do sort of a dueling version of herself in this, where she's playing Harleen Quinzel and then playing Harley. So you have we've talked about that several times, where a voice actor or actress is playing sort of multiple characters, and even though it's the same character, it's two different styles of the same character. So she does have to change up the way that she delivers the lines in those scenes to differentiate between the two personalities. So I think that from the get-go, it's very obvious, is from that scene where she lands on the ship and begins her dialogue, that she's very much cut out for voice actress work, and she hit a home run. It did not bother me at all that she wasn't doing an accent. And I just think that maybe it's because the fast-paced nature of the show and the quick dialogue, but you have to be a certain type of voice actor or actress in order to be able to be successful in these type of shows. And I don't think there's anybody that could say that she doesn't get it. Like, it's very obvious that she understands the assignment and knocks it out of the park. So yeah, I think that she clearly made a statement, even for this first episode, that she belongs in this world of voice acting. And I think that it's clear why they gave her the lead role for this very, very important show at the time, that was sort of supposed to be a part of this DC Universe app and streaming service going forward, that was going to entice people to watch it. So yeah, she's really good. I think she's superb.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. That, you know, rather than her trying to do an impression of somebody else's version of this character, in the same way that, you know, hey, Diedrich Bader's Batman is not really derivative at all of Kevin Conroy's Batman or Rino Romano's Batman or whoever. Like, there's a certain vibe or a certain affectation that might ring through all the different versions. But it's, yeah, this version is very much, it looks different. It's, you know, we've already talked about it, from the violence and the jokes and the language and everything. It's a different, they're going for a different vibe. And I think having her be this sort of punk rock Harley, it totally fits. And she does a great job across the whole episode of setting that up. Again, from playing the still sort of naive Harley at the start of the episode, all the way through to the end, when she is finally sort of setting out on her own for real. And yeah, I think she just bounces off of Lake Bell and Alan Tudyk so well in this episode as well. For all the reasons we've talked about, are just such an immensely talented voice cast. But to your point, Cal, these people aren't just in the cast because, hey, they're famous people that you've heard of. They all do a darn good job across this episode. So I ended up giving voice acting a perfect 10 out of 10.
Nice. I feel like I had no choice but to give it the same exact score. I also went with a 10 out of 10. It's pretty perfectly cast, and it's hard to argue with anybody's performance here. I think I either said they were stupendous, superb, or knocked it out of the park for almost every single cast member. So I'm pretty much left with no choice at that point. But yeah, strong scores from both of us on the voice acting, and just goes to show you that the importance of, you know, even if the rest of the show or parts of the show weren't necessarily my forte, the voice acting is done so well that, you know, you have to take note of that and appreciate it when reviewing it. So Yeah, love that. All right, Liam. Well, that will bring us to the end of our episode. So let's total up our scores. Totaling everything up on my end, I end up with a 30 out of 40. So pretty strong for a pilot episode of a cartoon. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a final score of 32 out of 40 as I total everything up for myself. Yeah, I think as we can jump into rewatchability, it's always a little harder to do that with non-main DCAU stories. But as far as its own show, I mean, yeah, it's the first episode of the series. It's the jumping off point for everything that comes after. Even though it is such a heavily comedic show with a lot of wacky characters, there is still sort of a narrative that is followed, a sort of overarching story that is followed week to week here, and this is where it all kicks off. So yeah, this one's I think a pretty easy 2 thumbs up. Like I said, I kind of wish they had maybe focused even more on the wacky side characters right out of the gate, but I get that you want to do some table setting before you jump all the way into the deep end.
Sure. Yeah. I think as far as pilot episodes go, this does exactly what it needs to do. It does set the table. It explains to you who the characters are. It makes your lead character out to be both a sympathetic character and also recognize that she's got a lot of flaws to her, which sounds silly when your main character is a supervillain, but as far as her mentally and her realizing her own self-worth and all of that she's different than at the end of the episode than where she starts. So we talk about that a lot as having an impact on the on whether or not the episode is a mandatory rewatch or not. I think if you're going to sit down and this is your type of humor, this is your jam, or this is your type of cartoon, or hey, you just want to give it a try again, you're an adult and you want to watch this, do so. Viewer discretion advised. If you're watching with kids, don't recommend it under the age of probably 15. If you're going to watch it, maybe 14. I don't know. I'm not a parent. So, but viewer discretion advised when doing so. But if you're an adult and you enjoy this type of humor, then my guess is that you will enjoy this. So that's a thumb up. And then it's the pilot of the episode, or pilot of the series. So you kind of got to understand a little bit about how we got to where we're headed with the different storylines that proceed throughout the show. So yeah, you're going to need to watch this one. So that's thumb number 2 for me. So 2 thumbs up as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Liam, well, that'll begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for checking us out. Don't forget, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you so much. You can do us a couple favors. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your program. Subscribe if it allows you to leave a little review, like on Apple Podcasts, or a 5-star review, like on Spotify. We would greatly appreciate that. That's one way you can support us and say thanks. You can also, if you're interested in doing so, support us by subscribing to the Pod Tower, as we mentioned at the top of the program. You can head over to youtube.com/the Pod Tower, and our episodes will be posted every Saturday. You can check out the videos, listen to them there if you want to. You can like the videos, that helps us. Subscribe to the channel, also that helps us. So those are a couple of ways to do so. You can also at the bottom of our Anchor page, or on a lot of the apps where our podcast is, there's a link. You can click on that link if you wish to support us. Throw a couple dollars our way. We would greatly appreciate that. You can also head over to DCAUreview.com and check out the store if you want to pick up a piece of merchandise to support us. We would greatly appreciate that too. But we know times are hard, so we don't expect that from you. We thank you if you're listening. You can also subscribe, or rather, you can go and like us on your favorite social media page. Head over to Instagram and follow us there, or head over to Twitter and follow us at DCAU Review on both pages. We have a lot of great conversations on Twitter. Liam does a fantastic job. We love interacting, talking about all things DC, whether it's animation or comic books or movies or whatever's happening. So join the conversation over there. Liam, we are turning the page here. We are headed for, believe it or not, the final, like the summer is coming to an end already. It's crazy. Can't believe it, but we've got an exciting month ahead of us for the month of August. Let's talk about what we'll be watching in the month of August.
That is right, Cal. We'll be headed back to the DCAU proper next week. And rather than pick a regular show to watch for the whole month, we are doing another character theme month. We've done a few of these in the past, and they are always quite a bit of fun. And this time, up in the driver's seat will be none other than The Flash himself, Wally West, and we will be talking about the two-part episode, which will be hard to name because of the other show we've already talked about. It's called Brave and the Bold, Parts 1 and 2, from Justice League Season 1. Not Batman Brave and the Bold, the series, but the Justice League two-parter, which, of course, not only is a Flash-focused episode, but also introduces Grodd and Gorilla City, which, of course, is derivative of Mr. Wing's Bird City. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that stolen idea next week, as we bring you a month focused all about the fastest man alive.
Cannot wait. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.
R.I.P. John Ritter.